To clarify, is the inquiry open right now? Is there a vote that's going to be taken in the House of Representatives? What do the next steps look like?
That's a great question because there's some confusion. There's two ways to open an impeachment inquiry. The House can take a vote, or the Speaker of the House can announce and open the investigation. He can open the impeachment inquiry. That was a precedent set forward by former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, and that's what he chose to do today, and I think it was a great, bold move.
Where do you see this ending up? Do you see this ending in removal from office for President Biden? Do you see this going even to a Senate trial, making out of the House of Representatives? What's the ceiling for this?
Well, what I actually want to see is I want to see a very deep dive, a detailed investigation, no matter how long it takes. And it may take months and months. It may go all the way to the November election. But what we need to do is we need to investigate Joe Biden. But we also need to investigate the web of people that exist in our federal agencies, the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, and many others, serving not only in this administration, the former administration, and the one before it, maybe even further. We need to find the people that have covered up Joe Biden's crimes and all of the Biden family's corruption. That's what's most important to me, because I really do believe in gutting the federal government of corruption, and this is the way we can start.
For the average person sitting at home, they see this, they think maybe this is kind of close to the 2024 election. Is this, once for all, is this politically motivated?
Absolutely not. It's not politically motivated at all. And the American people at home know one thing, that they're suffering under the Biden administration with a wide open border, an invasion of illegal immigrants, over 85,000 migrant children missing, over 300 Americans dying every single day from fentanyl. They can't afford their electric bills. They can't afford their gas bills. They can't afford groceries. That's what the American people know, and they know that politicians like Joe Biden, who's been in this place in office for over 50 years, have gotten richer and richer and richer every year they're in office, and they know why. And I'm really excited we're doing this impeachment inquiry because I believe we're going to expose the truth.
Welcome back, everyone. In the months that we were gone and the weeks, House Republicans have uncovered serious and credible allegations into President Biden's conduct. Taken together, these allegations paint a picture of a culture of corruption. Now, here's what we know so far. Through our investigations, we have found that President Biden did lie to the American people about his own knowledge of his family's foreign business dealings. Eyewitnesses have testified that the president joined on multiple phone calls and had multiple interactions. Dinners resulted in cars and millions of dollars into his sons and his son's business partners. We know that bank records show that nearly $20 million in payments were directed to the Biden family members and associates through various shell companies. The Treasury Department alone has more than 150 transactions involving the Biden family and other business associates that were flagged as suspicious activity by U.S. banks. Even a trusted FBI informant has alleged a bribe to the Biden family. Biden used his official office to coordinate with Hunter Biden's business partners about Hunter's role in Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company. Finally, despite these serious allegations, it appears that the president's family has been offered special treatment by Biden's own administration, treatment that not otherwise would have received if they were not related to the president. These are allegations of abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption, and they warrant further investigation by the House of Representatives. That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. That's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well.
Senate priorities will be to keep the government open, beyond the September 30th deadline. Both parties in both chambers are going to have to work together in a bipartisan way to avoid a shutdown. That is obvious. It may not be obvious to 30 crazy people in the far right of the Republican House, but it's obvious to everyone else. They can't just have it their way.
Forward, as I have said, we will need a CR to finish our work, and we must deliver supplemental funding to meet urgent needs. We should meet the entirety of the President's supplemental funding request. Those are the priorities the President's outlined, and they're very important. We need to make sure that we can help our communities around the country rebuild and recover from disasters. We have to make sure that the administration has the resources it needs to stop the flow of fentanyl. We have to avoid a pay cut for our wildland firefighters, and as both Democrats and Republicans have made very clear, we must continue our strong support for Ukraine in this critical moment. None of these are priorities that Congress should turn away from.
I think the impeachment inquiry is absurd. The American people want us to do something that will make their lives better, not go off on these chases and witch hunts. The bottom line is, as we have said, you can only accomplish keeping the government open in a bipartisan way. I have sympathy with Speaker McCarthy. He's in a difficult position. But sometimes you got to tell these people who are way off the deep end, who have no interest in helping the American people, who just want to pursue their own witch hunts, that they can't go forward with it. So I'm disappointed. I think it's absurd. But we are not going to let it stop us here in the Senate from keeping the government open and working in a bipartisan way.
Hello, everyone. We just had a lengthy discussion at lunch about getting the Senate appropriations process back to some semblance of normalcy. I think Senator Collins and Senator Murray have taken us in the right direction. This is the first time in 5 years that we've gotten all the bills out of committee. That's how broken we used to be. Most of them, if not all of them, were passed on largely bipartisan basis. Now it's up to the Senate to get them across the floor this week or next week. And this is the only way to avoid what my members despise the most, which is an omnibus and the inability to offer amendments. And so at least we've got to start now, and we need to finish the job.
Regarding the impeachment inquiry that the House is partaking in, what are your thoughts on that?
Are you talking about the general House situation?
Yes, the House
Yeah,
Representatives.
well, look, we got our hands full here trying to get through the appropriations process and not have an omnibus. And I don't have any advice to give to the House. They've got a totally different set of challenges than we do. And so I think the best advice for the Senate is to do our job, and we'll see how this plays out later.
Idea for Speaker McCarthy to open that impeachment inquiry in the president's name.
The impeachment inquiry. The impeachment inquiry.
Speaker McCarthy just opened on
Do you
that
support it?
Do you support that? Is it a good idea?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The impeachment inquiry.
The impeachment inquiry that Speaker McCarthy opened, announced to President Biden.
Yeah, look, I'm going to say it again. I don't think Leader McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy, needs any advice from the Senate on how to run the House.
Leader McConnell.
Extreme MAGA Republicans have launched an illegitimate impeachment inquiry that is a kangaroo court, fishing expedition, and conspiracy theater rolled into one. There is not a shred of evidence that President Joe Biden has engaged in wrongdoing. There is not a shred of evidence that President Joe Biden has committed an impeachable offense. There is not a shred of evidence that President Joe Biden has committed a crime. This is an illegitimate impeachment inquiry, period, full stop. It's a waste of time and taxpayer dollars. President Joe Biden is a good man. He's an honest man. He's a patriotic man. House Democrats will defend President Biden today. We will defend President Biden tomorrow. We will defend President Biden next week. We will defend President Biden next month. We will defend President Biden next year. We will defend President Biden until the very end.
This impeachment is based on no evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden, but it's all the evidence we need to show that Kevin McCarthy has lost control of the gavel. Donald Trump is the ultimate puppet master. Marjorie Taylor Greene is calling the shots. They ignored their constituents, and they have purged their ranks of anyone who could call themselves a moderate.
They're going to have to work out their own internal poisonous partisan political dynamics. House Democrats are going to continue to focus on the business of the American people. We have not had a discussion about a motion to discharge with respect to anything connected to funding the government. We have a responsibility to fund the government. There was an agreement that was reached that House Republicans negotiated with President Biden. So we shouldn't even be in this situation of a possible government shutdown. We will not be paying any right-wing ransom notes, period, full stop. It's not happening. And so this reckless legislative joyride that the extremists are trying to take the American people on, which may end in a government shutdown that will hurt the American people, hurt business, and hurt the economy, falls squarely at the feet of the extremists in the House Republican Conference.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the swamp. I think the impeachment inquiry is long overdue. Personally, I'm on the Oversight Committee, and I think that any other citizen that had stacked up against him what the president had stacked up against him right now would already be in court.
Recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates, for 5 minutes.
I rise today to serve notice. Mr. Speaker, you are out of compliance with the agreement that allowed you to assume this role. The path forward for the House of Representatives is to either bring you into immediate total compliance or remove you pursuant to a motion to vacate the chair. Joe Biden deserves impeachment for converting the vice presidency into an ATM machine for virtually his entire family.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to urge House Republicans to investigate one of the modern American scandals and political cons. Now, why did the Saudi government give Jared Kushner $2 billion just months after he left the Trump White House? Kushner, who oversaw Middle East policy for his father-in-law, has enriched himself and his family in what is clearly an enormous grift and likely serious conflict of interest crimes.
An ominous note sent by the Speaker earlier in a press conference that there will be an impeachment proceeding, an inquiry. I don't think that's what the American people are ready for back home. They also said that they're here to shut down government. We need to shut down government? What the American people need is what everyone gave speeches about yesterday, talking about how after September the 11th, we all came together as a country and focused on what needs to be done.
Unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
I've just never heard of a president being impeached because of the actions of a family member. I'm not aware if that's anything that's ever been proposed. And I think Republicans know this to an extent because they're trying to draw connections between what Hunter Biden has done, and certainly he looks like he's in a lot of legal trouble. But they have to establish a connection between Hunter Biden and some kind of near criminal connection. Each stage here involves risks for both parties. Republicans, if they don't come up with more than what they've got, they will face a real choice between pursuing things on the floor of the House when there will be substantial arguments and evidence against them, and maybe it would go down to defeat, and that would look very bad for them. Or they succeed because they work to convince their members of the party that there's sufficient evidence, but then it falls apart in the Senate. There's been a lot of argument over the years over what high crimes and misdemeanors means, but none of the definitions I've ever heard really apply to what President Biden has been shown to have done so far. Of course, something might turn up in a further investigation, and maybe one of the speaker's hopes is that this will give the House additional authority to discover more evidence of wrongdoing than has so far been shown. Some of us are distressed about this because we thought the lesson of the Nixon impeachment that wasn't really adhered to in the Clinton impeachment was that really the level of seriousness of the allegations really has to be at a high level before you go forward. But now it looks like we're involved in a tit-for-tat situation where the parties feel that any effort against a president of their own has to be, in effect, paid back. There has to be payback. And that's a really bad situation for any democracy to be in, because it could obviously just spiral out of control. Every president is going to be subject to impeachment. That's not a good look for us, and it's also a horrible policy distraction.